The Venus Project. Team Speak Seminar. January 29, 2012.
Hello, Jacque and Roxanne. How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Hey, Joe. We're well. How's everybody? I guess you can't all answer, but glad to see you here.
Before we get started, if anyone's got any questions that they haven't already sent through to questions@thevenusproject.com, please double-click my name in the seminar room, send me your questions, and I'll get those over to Jacque and Roxanne. What we normally do is answer the questions that have been sent through previously to questions@thevenusproject.com. Once we're finished with those, we'll go through any questions that have been sent to me. If we've got time at the end, we'll open the floor to anyone that wants to ask questions in person. And on that note, I'll hand it over to Jacque and Roxanne.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Just start with the questions here. How will the city or regions be named in the future?
By longitude and latitude.
On the subject of distribution, how would it be determined who gets what until abundance is created?
They'll be notified as to how long it might take industry to tool up to provide for the needs of most people.
And who determines who gets what until then?
The first priorities will be determined by what is needed to make that condition possible. In other words, the planners will need drafting instruments or machines to reproduce images. So that would be determined by need, by social need, not individual need.
I was wondering if Jacque had all the detailed information written in books and technical manuals, all his blueprints on how a resource-based economy works, how to raise children, how schools would work, how work is determined, etc.
It all depends on the country or the sponsors of the first project.
The question is, do you have it all written down?
Some of it, not all of it.
On determining who gets to work at agricultural branches, survey committees, etc., Jacque stated that people submit their background sheets to schools and work is assigned to them. Let me just get down to where the question is. I guess he's asking, essentially, wouldn't it come to somebody making a decision as to who would work where?
It depends on the size of the agricultural project and how many people have to be fed and clothed and housed. All of that will be based upon the population of the groups that join with the Venus Project proposals. We cannot estimate that until we get a commitment from different countries.
Would there be some sort of grading system for the performance to determine who works where?
Not immediately. Not during the transition.
It's whoever would want to help.
Yes.
Would there be, he's still asking, would there be a need to some way to differentiate one's performance from another person's?
Yes, definitely.
How is that done?
On their performance only. I've mentioned that many times.
Okay. This person is asking if Jacque's had a chance to glance at his Facebook. No, we haven't looked at the Facebook. I think Nate is keeping that up for Jacque's Facebook. We haven't looked at it recently, actually for quite some time. We just don't have time to keep up with Facebook. Have you ever seen the documentaries, What the Bleep Do I Know?
Never. I have not seen it.
Yeah. Does Jacque know any other languages besides English?
A little bit of Spanish, a little bit of German, a little bit of Italian, but not much more.
Would people still be able to enjoy past and present novels, movies, music?
I don't think they will find them interesting anymore. I don't think with the new education after the transition, I don't think the old world would be of much interest to them.
And there's so much new information that's needed to learn in order to accomplish certain tasks, and people will be working on things that are relevant to updating the new society.
Yes.
Old movies and novels are not relevant to that. What are Jacque's views on daytime talk shows that try to resolve human relations, such as Dr. Phil or Dr. Oz?
I consider it babble.
Dr. Phil really,
I said babble.
Yes, he really works on a free will, people thinking and making their own choices and reprimanding them for things that they've done. And yeah, doesn't really understand the causes of behavior. Since a big collapse is almost inevitable, in such a scenario, if we face technological or communication blackouts in the world, what would a common man do in such a scenario, like gather food, generate electricity, gather society? What is the guideline path for the followers to follow and start the beginning of a better world after the collapse?
You can't start the beginning of a better world until all things that they try do not work. When people lose confidence in their leaders, if they turn to the Venus Project, we will have a procedural system. If they do not, we can't.
Now this person has a lot of questions that are similar, like he says, do we use 40% of our resources to build everyone's large expensive homes with columns and ornamentation, or do we build everyone's small, plain, cheap homes and use the savings in time, energy, and resources for something else?
Yes, the second portion of the question.
He's saying, do we use cheap, small homes?
No.
I've never heard of you saying cheap, small homes.
We actually may build larger dwellings for people rather than individual homes. They take up too much space and they require too much energy. When you build a single large apartment or dwelling system, it consumes much less energy.
So eventually more people would be living in apartments or instead of individual homes?
Yes, to start with.
And do we get a new bathroom, kitchen, and furniture every 5 years, or do we remodel every 50 years and use the savings in time, energy, and resources?
We don't have a kitchen. We have dining areas. It's inefficient for millions of people to make breakfast every morning. There really is sales of refrigerators, ovens by the corporations today. They want to sell every home a kitchen. We don't want to do that. We want to have dining areas throughout the entire city. Now, if you wanted food independently, you could order it and it could be delivered by what they used to call a dumbwaiter. It's a gadget that travels a little tiny elevator that can move food to your apartment if you want it. But you don't need a kitchen. You don't need a refrigerator. You don't need all the energy required to operate each home. What you need is major areas where you can have different types of breakfast. But the food will be designed by nutritional experts rather than, but the food to be made to taste like anything you want it to taste like.
This person keeps asking similar questions about, do we build extravagantly or do we build cheap and fast to conserve resources? And he seems to have nothing in between. He says, do we build Mercedes cars or do we build cheap, low-cost budget cars, low-budget cars?
We don't build any cars. We build a transportation in the city system that can take you anywhere within a few minutes. Automobiles are inefficient means of transportation. They're also dangerous and require a great deal of energy.
And we don't want to build things cheap, low budget. We want to build things so they don't wear out and break down. Otherwise, the society has to maintain it.
There's minimum wear. There isn't no wear.
Who decides on the final designs of the new, say if you build a stadium or a restaurant or a new car or clothes or a new amusement park or golf course, who decides on the design?
The end goal you wish to achieve.
But
the end goal we wish to achieve decides the amount of people working on a given project.
And what it looks like, who decides the design?
The design is based upon the efficiency of the system. If the efficiency caters to the majority it's used, If two people come up with an equally good system, we use both. If there are three equally good systems, we use the three systems. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
But efficiency doesn't mean building things so, like they said, like this person mentions,
Cheap.
that are cheap.
No.
It does not mean efficiency.
Everything is well built. Prefabricated units.
Wait, my hand wasn't down. Jacque was saying unless we have a national emergency or
Earthquake.
or earthquake, then we build prefabricated units that can go out quickly and house people.
And take care of their needs.
Yeah, do you want to say something, Andrew?
Yeah, basically, the way we're used to doing things in our current culture is that we're used to having our decisions made by other people. So, for example, when you go to work, you're working for a boss. That boss makes the decisions based on things like how much profits are going to be made in whatever work it is that you're doing, etc. And this goes right the way up through into governments and into global governance, etc. That these decisions are made by certain people within society based on specific things such as the economy, such as profits of the company and the shareholders, etc., etc. This is a very different system to what Jacque talks about with the Venus Project. When we're talking about arriving at decisions rather than people making decisions, it's the values of the culture that apply to that decision-making process. So when people have a similar kind of value process going on whereby we all agree on that certain things need to be done rather than certain things have to be done for profits, when there's a need or a requirement, for example, for a bridge to be built between two land masses, it's the effect that we want to achieve that determines how many people are needed to actually work on that project. So, for example, if there was a tsunami in Southeast Asia or something, and there's a massive contingency that needs to be done to deal with that problem, that would be plastered all over the sort of notice boards, if you like, within the cities, as far as like your displays and stuff. It would be in your morning news, that all this disaster's happened. And the people that work in those contingency areas would determine how much of a response needs to be made in order to meet the requirements of dealing with that problem. And that would be the same for city design, that would be the same for designing buildings, for energy, etc., etc. That the teams involved in that specific area of expertise would then work out what needs to be done to get that project underway and completed. So it's a very different system from what we're used to of looking to other people for those decisions to be made, which at the moment are currently generally made through economic decisions.
Yes, I agree with you, Andrew.
That's true. And in terms of the special contingencies, we have a group that works on special contingencies if there is an earthquake or if something happens, but they have access to whatever resources they need ahead of time. They don't have to go to the government and get approval, and you don't have to have kids give cans of soup in their school. They have all the resources they need to bring a town or a city back up to good living conditions very quickly. And they would go in and take care of that right away. In your 1974-1980 lecture, Science and Social Change, you mentioned that there cannot be any purpose in nature. What do you mean by that? Can you talk about the idea of purpose?
Nature goes on. If there's a hurricane, it doesn't question whether there are children to be destroyed or whether there's cities. The hurricane just travels in the direction, whatever direction conditions set. Nature has, from my point of view, I see no purpose in nature. I see a hurricane not avoiding a church. I don't see a hurricane avoiding old folks' home. We have to provide for maximum safety in the design of cities, shelters, hospitals, and all the other conditions. We do not control nature. Eventually, we may learn to control some aspects of nature, but at that time, things will be quite different.
There really is no purpose. The idea of purpose comes from religion. Yes. It's somebody making something for a certain purpose.
I can give you an example. A doctor claimed that we had eyes to see. That's why we have eyes. So I took him into a dark room and I said, see. He says, you have to turn a light on. And you can't see with your eyes. You need light to see with your eyes. The same holds true. In the human body, there are certain glands, and they operate certain functions. The Venus Project operates the same way. People that deal with agriculture deal with agriculture. The public makes no decision in that area unless they're agronomists. The public makes no decision in the design of the bridge. The conditions that the bridge are required to serve determines the size, shape, and the amount of traffic, and the structural system. That's done by engineering. The public is under the illusion that they make decisions, but if you ask any member of any society, particularly in America, whether you voted for the Vietnam War, they would say no. Did you vote for the space program? They would say no. Then ask them where they participate. They think they vote for the leaders of the country, but they are selected by other groups, pro-establishment groups. When I was a kid, they used to tell me that the purpose of horns on an animal is to defend the animal. And I asked them where the horns were on a rabbit. They can sure use them. Well, the rabbit has no horns. It's very slow and it's very easily caught. There are some animals with horns that face the front direction of the animal, forward. There are some horns that slant backwards. There's some horns that curl inward. Animals are born with horns in every which way direction. They use them. They learn to use the best they can of the direction of the horns that they're born with. But they are not to defend the animal. They say that some animals are born, or insects, to look like a leaf. Yes, they do look like a leaf. And when they crawl over ground that doesn't look like a leaf, they're picked off. When they get to an area that looks like a leaf, they stay there longer. And it's not that the animal adjusts its body to reflect the leaf. They're born every which way, and they crawl over the ground and settle in the area. If an animal has shapes, if it gets among the bulrush, if it gets among plants which run vertically linear, they're not bothered as much. If the stripes run contra to the direction they're picked off. If a dark animal settles over the dark sand, they're not bothered as much as a dark animal on the light sand. Nature does not adjust. All that is BS, bad science.
Yes, they say nature adapts. It doesn't
Nature
adapt.
does not. The animals that are born that can't get the worms in the deep mud die out. Nature makes billions of mistakes. You'll have to be extremely honest to arrive at the conclusions of a Venus Project. There's no purpose in life itself except the purpose you give your own life.
And the purpose that you put on technology as well.
Yes, of course.
What do you mean by biosocial pressures?
Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, those cause people to behave a certain way. If it's a major earthquake and most of the buildings are destroyed, the people are subject to biosocial pressures. That means hurricanes, lightning, tsunamis, wave destruction. Whatever happens naturally is biosocial pressures. The march of events is a description of what happens.
This person, I guess, is asking again in the classic lecture tours, in the classical lectures, 1974, 1980 lecture Science and Social Change, you give an example about gold. You say that gold travels towards light if broken down to fine particles, and that gold is an organic material.
I didn't say that.
I don't remember that, but maybe you were talking about something in relation to that. I don't know. Can you explain what you mean gold is an organic material and give an example again?
Gold particles, gold when reduced to fine particles has a tendency to move toward ultraviolet light. It's called phototropism.
In the 1974-1980 lecture, Science and Social Change, you mentioned an example where in the past, in the tires of airplanes, there was some kind of liquid material, rubber, for a specific reason. Can you give that example again?
I have no idea what they're talking about.
Maybe they're talking about your design for rubber wasn't worn out that much when it hit what you did.
I never talked about that. I didn't say that. I said tires that are designed not to wear out will be purchased by the tire company so that they can resell tires.
I don't remember this example that the person's giving, but I remember the design that you did when you worked for the aircraft company. We put the vanes in the tires so they don't wear out.
Not the tires, the center of the wheel.
Right, right.
Not that they don't wear out, that they rotate the wheel.
Right, but I don't know if this person is referring to that. Jacque designed tires. They have trouble in aircraft a long time ago where the tires would wear out when they landed because they couldn't turn quickly enough. So Jacque designed type of
blade system
in the middle of the wheel.
Side of the wheel.
Yes, so
that when the landing gear came down, the wind rotated the tires, so they'd have minimum wear.
Yes, I don't know if this is what the person is talking about, but I don't remember the liquid material in rubbers either. Has the Venus Project ever collaborated with the Resonance Project? I don't know what it is.
I'm not familiar with it.
No. Okay, how are sales and exposure going for the digital version of the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy? I don't know if it's up yet. There's another group that's handling that for us. It will be up very soon. I have to speak with him on either Monday or Tuesday, so I'll get up to speed on that. What is the latest news on the Venus Project doing a TED Talk? Jacque was invited to speak on TED in Canada, and we are working that out remotely. That's the only offer that we've had for that recently, other than the senior membership for Jacque that we couldn't comply with. Because you had to pay $2,000 for that, and the person was required to do 3 different lectures throughout the world, and they only gave the price for a ticket as an economy class for 1 ticket, and Jacque needs to travel business class so he can put his feet up just for health reasons. For anybody elderly needs to do that. So we couldn't participate in that. That was a TED invitation. That was many years ago. Have any details on the new 45-minute movie? Yes, I just finished about a 50-minute documentary, and we are putting music on it now, and as soon as that's done, we're going to get it up on the internet for free. It's an introduction to the Venus Project. It's really for introducing people who haven't heard about this direction to the Venus Project. When will it be released? As soon as possible, as soon as we can get the music up. I have one person interested in doing that now. If she takes too long, we'll go another route. How will it be released? Yes, on the internet for free. Can we see it in local cinemas? I think that would be a good idea. I think it's a good piece for that. And how would this be done financially? I don't know. I haven't considered that yet. We'd have to work that out. What books is Jacque reading now?
Just news bulletins as to what's new. I read many books, but there's a lot of, if you know what Sunday in May means, there's a lot of irrelevancy in books. Books may deal with language, prefabricated houses, but they don't seem to tie everything together. They're independent approaches to many problems.
This person has read a lot of the books on the recommended reading list, and he's trying to find additional relevant materials to read. That's why he asked the question. Jacque's usually in the middle of 3 books at once. What do you think of philosophy as a subject?
I don't know. I've never found anything in philosophy that I could use.
Yeah, it says in terms of its practical application and use in society.
I never found anything that I could use. I only need methods of growing food, building houses, educating people, how to make them creative in the arts and sciences, that I'm interested in. But I'm not interested in people ought to learn to live together in peace and harmony. I don't know what those words mean.
What exactly happened to the Ku Klux Klan members or the White Citizen Councils? Do you have any communication with them?
Not anymore. This was years and years ago.
Yeah, it's probably about 70 years ago.
Yes. I imagine most of the people that I talked to years ago in the Klan are no longer living.
This person's asking about wanted you to speak about the over $100,000 collected for the scriptwriter.
And other purposes.
Yeah, hopefully other purposes related too, for a budget and for a trailer, whatever we can do with that. How will the money be spent? Yes, for a scriptwriter and hopefully budget and a trailer. How will you fund the movie itself? Well, once the script is written, then we're going to make many contacts in regards to the film and for funding. But the main important thing is to finalize the script. We have many things written about the script right now, but the scriptwriter will put certain things together and add to characters. Milton Friedman once said, when everybody owns something, nobody owns it, and nobody has a direct interest in maintaining or improving its condition.
That's his concept. I understand. We do not deal with it that way. We have a different approach. There are people that are assigned responsibility in different areas, and they maintain that operation, whatever they're assigned to do. Just as you make a contract with a bridge builder and they do nothing but build bridges. They don't equip a butcher shop. When something goes wrong with your plumbing, you call a plumber. When something goes wrong with the electrician, with the electrical works of the building, you call upon an electrician. We do the same thing. We have a list of highly qualified people, and we assign them different projects. Yes, we do take responsibility for it. Each person is assigned to carry out a given project. That means they have the full ability to act on any project they're assigned.
Okay, this person is saying about the Ku Klux Klan members after he turned them around. What happened to them right after you turned them around?
Well, they began to read books about different subjects, and they got their information from books and qualified people rather than hearsay.
What do you mean by the carrying capacity of the earth decides the size of your population, and how does technology affect this?
Technology can make it happen faster. It can speed up the production of goods and services. So I would say the carrying capacity of an environment determines how many people can live in that environment. In other words, you can't send 100,000 people to the moon unless you build enclosed food growing systems, safe shelters, and a water supply system to recirculate used water. So it's the dependency on the development of the equipment that can do those things that determine how many people can live on the moon, or how many people the moon's environment can support. You can't just send an arbitrary group of 1,000 people without providing for the needs. Without providing for their needs.
Are we already over the carrying capacity of the earth?
Not yet.
And why do we have poverty, etc.?
Because you live in a monetary system, which is not social at all. It's concerned with profit. The bottom line is profit, not the working people, their health conditions. All that is the old establishment.
Yes, the government is not set up for your well-being. Okay, and if so, what do we do about it? I tell that person, him or her, look into a resource-based economy in the Venus Project. I'm sure we don't want to kill the extra people. What is the solution?
Devising new materials and new arrangements of edibles. In other words, the ocean can provide many different types of food. We do not harness the oceans yet. There's a lot of edible material in the oceans. There are a lot of combinations of materials which we formerly have not eaten, which can be converted to food. There's a lot of work to be done, and the sooner the Venus Project can start on that, the sooner and the safer lives will be of people. The degree that we restrict these developments, people will suffer. And don't ask me what I can do. I'm not in control. I have no power at all. Neither do most people. They want to know what we can do to avoid misery. We're not in a position to do anything. We don't control armies, navies, decisions. Politicians do that. It's when the politicians fail, and if the Venus Project is put in charge, then we can tell you what we would do. But we can't do anything unless we're in a position to do those things, appointed to do those things.
You wanted to mention something, Andrew?
You can't put a man on the moon unless you bring people together who study that subject.
You wanted to mention something, Andrew?
Yeah, this question actually came about from a previous question that came through to me, which was basically about depopulation, forced depopulation. Obviously, this isn't something that the Venus Project even considers as a viable option. The thing to understand is that if the elites, for example, do have some kind of depopulation agenda, that it's based on ignorance. Ignorance of what the carrying capacity of the Earth is, ignorance of the inherent mismanagement of resources through the monetary system, and also a failure to understand the effects that consumerism has on the amount of resources that we have available and the amount of resources that we waste. Currently in this system, we waste more than 90% of all materials that are ever created, always end up as waste. Most of that isn't recycled at the moment. So at the moment, we've got this massive mismanagement of the Earth's resources. And that will affect things like population and poverty and famine, because those resources aren't being managed properly. And when you add into that the sort of inherent problems associated with managing resources according to who can afford to and who can't, that just compounds the problem even more. So when the Venus Project talks about a resource-based economy, we're talking about the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. So that is, we get away from consumerism. We stop producing things just so that we can continue to make money from them. It's a completely aberrant system that we're currently living in that sense. So when you start to think that we'll do away with the 90% of waste that we currently have, and that any waste that we do have, we'll be working on ways to recycle those materials. And you add on to that the fact that we'll be intelligently managing those resources for the benefit of people rather than for the benefit of single institutions or governments and financiers, etc. It's such a very different system that the carrying capacity of the Earth would probably be several hundred times probably more than what it actually is at the moment with our poor management of the resources. And when you add in things like technological advancements, which at the moment are happening pretty much in an exponential rate in many areas, those technological advances, such as advanced materials that replace existing materials that are scarce, the more we're able to do this, the more our carrying capacity increases, because we can actually produce more than an abundance for the people that we've already got, which then allows us an extra percentage of people that don't yet exist that we could also take care for. So it's just a very different system than what we've got now.
Yes, and nobody would be killed for overpopulation. We still have enough resources to take care of everyone today, we feel. But people in the future, when they have so many more options, we don't think that they'd only want to get married and have kids. This is the main goal today in society, is to get married and have kids. They'd be doing so many more things that it just won't be pushed like that, and they probably won't have as many children. When people are more educated, they have less children, but they would be educated in terms of what the carrying capacity is on the Earth and what happens if you overpopulate. They get education instead of any forceful indoctrination type of thing. Jacque talks about the influence of environment on our values, lives, education, language, etc. When we arrive into the world, we are sort of a blank slate. But the environment is created by people. So should we look at internal or external forces that create human beings, nature or nurture, not only environment.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, it's a value system that has to go along with the resource-based economy.
It has to be related, not just go along with it. It has to be relevant to the world you live in. So all decisions have to be based upon what is there physically, not the opinions of people.
As long as the monetary system persists, you can't superimpose a value system on people that is sustainable, because this system is not. The output of a resource-based economy sounds so much greater than the output of today's monetary system. Why then don't we just build a city and then make profits from it, and the profits go towards the further goals of a resource-based economy? We're all for that, but in today's society, you need resources in order to build a city, the type of city that uses the best of technology. Most parents find their small children to have a lack of experience in many areas. Okay, is this the reason why the Venus Project reflects only Jacque's vision of social technological blueprints, as well as the reason why the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project parted? Do you know what they're asking?
The Zeitgeist movement has nothing to do with the Venus Project. The Venus Project is the procedures necessary to solve problems. The Zeitgeist movement points out the shortcomings of our culture.
Well, I think this person's asking, did you part because you felt you had more experience or more knowledge in the field?
I just answered that.
Yeah. What the Zeitgeist movement is doing is not really what the Venus Project is advocating to the fullest extent. And we had no real cooperation with the Zeitgeist movement in terms of the direction that it went towards or that it moved in. It was really Peter's movement, and it wasn't a cooperative venture. What happens if there's a shortage of people doing a necessary social task that cannot be automated? For example, nursing, due to the lack of interest among the population, etc.
We don't depend on population. He's talking about today's economy.
Well, what if there are jobs that there are not enough people
that
they want to do?
There's no such thing. A great deal of the nursing profession can be automated, not all of it. So we will automate as much as we can and systematize the way nurses work. They don't work efficiently. We need efficiency experts to advise how hospitals will be run to conserve energy and serve more people.
Can a resource-based economy work or sustain itself if we did one test city, or can it only work if the whole world implements it?
If the whole world implements it, we cannot operate as separate nations. It won't work.
But it will evolve city by city.
If it doesn't evolve, you'll have trouble.
Yes.
To the extent that it doesn't evolve and include all the nations, all the people must share all the Earth's resources. Nothing less will work. You can demonstrate it on a lesser scale, but that's not the answer.
But it is an evolutionary process.
Yes.
You can't do it all at once through the whole world. Have you ever visited Belgium?
No, not to my
And what do you think of Europe in general?
I think they're well ahead of the United States, if that's what you mean. I think the people are broader in their views. Their education system must be somewhat different. Their newspapers must be much more direct and honest than our propaganda systems. Europe is much more advanced due to the fact that they have a broader point of view. They are closer to other nations and they understand the differences in greater detail. U.S. is mostly immersed in propaganda.
In regard to the scriptwriter, has someone been selected?
We have not selected a writer yet. We have a lot of people applying for it and trying to work on it. We will let you know as soon as we find someone that we feel is capable of doing that job.
Yes, we are looking at many people. Do you have a program on curing anxiety or depression?
Yes, the Venus Project.
If so, how can people access it?
They can't until we get the Venus Project installed.
There is a lot of stress in this culture. We do have a lot of videos and information about dealing with society, actually. You can see parts of it on our YouTube channel, and then we have many videos dealing on different topics such as that. Will money be instantly distinguished from the system or step by? Well, this says distinguished.
No.
It probably should be extinguished, yes. From the system or step by step continuously. How do you see that?
Well, if the Venus Project is installed, people just have access to food, not money.
But as a
It's
process in the world today, how do you see it happening?
Happens, how bad conditions are. I can't answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how much work other people do to assist us. If we don't get the assistance we need, there'll be lots of trouble.
Again, somebody's asking, who makes all the subjective, non-technical decisions in a resource-based economy?
Like what? I have to
How
know
discretionary resources are allocated. For example, do we build beautiful hotels or do we build cheap ones? Low-budget motels.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about this price system.
I think he's asking, same thing again, do we use, in order to have many people have access to materials, do we build cheap, his word cheap, or her word, to save in time and energy and resources, or something else?
Something else.
Whether we use resources for a nicer hotel or for something else is subjective, not technical.
Yes. We take care of those problems as best we can with the knowledge we have and the material resources we have.
Do we build of lesser quality so more people can use it?
We don't do that. That's a price system thing.
Yeah. There aren't those types of answers that it's either one way or the other.
That's fine.
And when you take money out of the scenario,
yes,
you don't need to make those types of decisions. Those are decisions based on money today.
Soldiers don't pay money. They go in, they eat lunchtime and dinner time. There's no money. They get uniforms as they request them. They get medical care and there's no money passing from soldier to doctor.
Can you explain D4411B serial number in the Army?
No.
I don't know what they're asking. What would happen with gambling? People enjoy it without money. How would this happen?
The schools are entirely different. These are all monetary questions within a monetary system. We don't even deal with that. We don't have those problems. It's like talking about beauty.
This person's asking, has the scriptwriter been found yet? No, not yet. Or do you still trying to find a suitable scriptwriter before handing over the donation money to them? The process we've been using so far to find a scriptwriter is we make it mandatory that if somebody is interested, they come here to the tour. They don't have to pay for the tour. We don't pay for their way out here. And then they stay over and discuss the script with Jacque the next day. And then they ask a lot of questions. They go back and they write something. We give them a lot of things to read in regards to what was been written, and they submit something. And to see if they're really on track with the characters, with the direction, if they understand this point of view well enough to write the script. We don't pay people for that at this point. And we wouldn't pay until we really know that they are capable. We did have somebody write something that was helpful, and we did pay a small amount, but we did not pay with the donations that came out of our own pockets. Jacque, how do we manage the food in the future?
Just as you do when you go to a restaurant where they have a wide variety, you select what has been put out there by the health department, by nutritional experts. There's a wide variety. You have to select from that.
You're talking about in restaurants, or?
Yes. Yes, in restaurants. I mentioned that.
Can you talk about a short introduction into the spiritual parts of the Venus Project?
To me, spiritual means no poverty, no hunger, minimum suffering, and to do the best we can for all people. And if that isn't spiritual, I don't know what is.
Today, they talk about spirituality. We talk about it in terms of a verbal hobby. It's just words today. The Venus Project is the translation of what they talk about into a working reality. As Jacque mentions, there would be no war, no poverty, no hunger. People would work cooperatively. There wouldn't be the competitive issues as in the monetary system. So I think what people are talking about in regards to spirituality is what the Venus Project is advocating and describing how we can arrive at that.
I'd like to make a suggestion, Jacque and Roxanne, if I can.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, in regard to the screenwriter, I would ask the question, how will a decision be arrived at in regard to selecting a specific individual? But what I would suggest is this. My research is telling me that the role of a paid screenwriter is not only to write a script, but generally within the current industry, it seems that the role of a paid screenwriter is also to pitch that script to others in the industry for further investment and contribution. So my suggestion would be, not only should the selected screenwriter be a good writer and have understanding of the project, but perhaps the selected screenwriter should also be one who could sell sand to an Arab, for lack of a better term, a very good salesman that can pitch the script to others in the industry once completed.
Well, that would be good if they had that experience or if they were in the field. But being in the field and having that experience doesn't always mean that they could write on this subject. Some of the screenwriters that we're talking to, we're not excluding people that have not been successful in the field, and they don't always know people who they can pitch to. That's more in line, I believe, with the producers. We're not against that. That would be wonderful if we could find somebody who has those kind of contacts, but we're not excluding them if they don't and they can write well. Is there a time when the situation will be irreversible in society today, when the Venus Project can't really pitch what we're trying to do?
Yes, if we don't get to enough people and they continue to damage the environment, there can be a point of no return.
Can you explain how constructive criticism is important in a resource-based economy, and maybe give an example? Should one take constructive criticism personally?
No. Let me give you an example. If a person says the Venus Project will never work, that's an ego problem. We don't even bother with that. But if you offer a condition for filtering water, a condition for increasing agricultural yield, yes, we're interested. But if you just say, oh, I don't think there's any way of doing that, that is a nothing statement. We can't do anything with that. If somebody says, who makes the decisions? Who makes the decisions today in the technical areas, technical people? Politicians do not make decisions. They have opinions about a lot of things, and they really don't know the consequences of their decisions. Whereas a technician says, if you use an I-beam so wide and so deep and a certain alloy, it can hold up so much weight. That's a quality that politicians do not have. We do not call upon people that do not have the specific way of dealing with problems.
What problems would people have in a resource-based economy that would not exist in the monetary system?
Undoing the monetary system's values.
I've heard of a children's book about the Venus Project. Does it have Jacque's approval? because I want my nephew and niece to learn more about this way of thinking. There was a nice book by Pat McCord. It's on our website. You can see it on the right-hand side there, I believe, of our website. It's called Rings of Venus, and she has it as an iBooks. And it's not a printed book yet, but you can get it on Amazon and for other such software devices, so you can read it through your computer. Yes, there's a lot of good ideas in that book, and it's an inspirational book for children, I think. Do you feel that way?
Yes, it's pretty good. It doesn't cover all the details, just some of them.
I thought it was good for adults as well. Are we looking at Hollywood writers who have written successful major Hollywood blockbusters?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Do you think if the Venus Project activists do volunteer work in the Monetary Society, will that help to promote the Venus Project? Yes, of course. Anybody out there trying to get the word out about the Venus Project would be very helpful. It'd be good to learn about it first. I'd suggest getting Jacque's book, The Best That Money Can't Buy. That would be very helpful. Andrew, do you want to go over some of the things that are being done?
Yep, sure. Okay, just a brief update. As some of you know, we've been working, a small team of us have been working on a project that was originally under the writing team called TVP Magazine. It's a quarterly magazine that we'll be updating in between the quarterly issues, but it'll be a sort of quarterly issued magazine online at www.tvpmagazine.com. We're actually pretty much finished with that now. We're just doing some proofreading and some final QA on it. The aim is to get that published on Monday evening at midnight UTC. Jump along to that whenever you get, after sort of Monday or Tuesday. Lots of new stuff up there. You should find it quite interesting. If you want to get involved in developing content for the next issue, you can send your content, articles, etc. through to admin@thevenusproject.com, and we'll put those through the proofreading process, etc. And get those published up for the next issue. We've got Roxanne's been working on a documentary, as many of you know. She's now pretty much finished with that, got some music score to add to it. As soon as that's done, we'll be releasing that free online for the CVP activism teams, etc. to use and make DVDs of and hand out and things like this, and that'll be free online. What else? The software development team, we're currently in the early stages of developing Alice, which is a project for a collaboration tool that all of the teams will be using for project management and just general sort of activities within the teams, emails and all sorts of stuff. So if you want to find out more about that, again, just send a query into admin@thevenusproject.com, put in the subject Project Alice, and Sven can fill you in on the details of that one. I think that's pretty much it for the moment. One thing we will be doing on the magazine, we just added it to it actually, is you'll see a volunteers section in the menu. Once it's up on Monday night, you can go onto those volunteer pages and basically we'll be posting up the different positions that we're looking for to fill within various teams. So if we need coordinators for certain projects, or if we need members with certain skill sets, etc., that will be like a human resources area on the TVP magazine website, which you'll be able to check out after midnight on Monday. I think that's pretty much it for now.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everybody, for attending. We appreciate that.
Thank you again very much.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry if I don't answer all the questions, but a lot of the questions you ask are outside of the Venus Project. They're within the monetary system. And you have to become very familiar with the Venus Project in order to ask questions about the Venus Project.
Thanks, Jacque and Roxanne.